Hello, BookTube. I thought we'd do another psalm today. I had a request for, I think it was Psalm 91, so we'll do that today on an overcast, very rain-smelly Sunday. Rain is definitely coming. And we'll start, as always, with the King James Bible. This is the Norton Critical Edition of the King James Bible. Let's see what the King James Bible has to say for Psalm 91. Let me get the page ready so that I'm not getting in my own way here. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and fortress. My God, in Him will I trust. Surely He shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler, from the noisome pestilence. He shall cover thee with His feathers, and under His wings shalt thou trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler. Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor the arrow that flieth by day, nor for the pestilence that walketh in the darkness, nor for the destruction that wasteth at noonday. 1,000 shall fall by thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come nigh thee. Only with thine eyes shalt thou behold and see the reward of the wicked. Because thou hast made the Lord, which is my refuge, even the Most High, thy habitation, there shall no evil befall thee, neither shall any plague come nigh thy dwelling. For he shall give his angels charge over thee, to keep thee in all ways. They shall bear thee up in their hands, lest thou dash thy foot against a stone. Thou shalt tread upon the lion and adder, the young lion and dragon shalt thou trample under feet. Because he hath set his love upon me, therefore I will deliver him. Now I want you to notice here, I don't mean to interrupt, but this last verse, this last stanza, it changes to the viewpoint of God. Okay, so when these last lines are being spoken by God. Because he hath set his love upon me, therefore I will deliver him. I will set him on high, because he hath known my name. He shall call upon me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life will I satisfy him, and shew him my salvation. So there you go. That is the King James Version of Psalm 91. Now we're gonna do what we always do here, a sort of translation school here, and move on to other translations. So now we will do the New English Bible. This is a sort of an updated King James, and we'll see what they do with Psalm 91. You that live in the shelter of the Most High, and lodge under the shadow of the Almighty, who say, The Lord is my safe retreat, and my God the fastness in which I trust. He himself will snatch you away from fowler's snare or raging tempest. He will cover you with his pinions, and you shall find safety beneath his wings. You shall not fear the hunter's trap by day, or the arrow that flies by day, the pestilence that stalks in darkness, or the plague raging at noonday. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 close at hand, but you it shall not touch. His truth will be your shield and your rampart. With your own eyes you will see all this. You shall watch the punishment of the wicked. For you, the Lord is a safe retreat. You have made the Most High your refuge. No disaster shall befall you, no calamity shall come upon your home. For he has charged his angels to guard you wherever you go, to lift you on their hands. For fear you shall strike your foot against a stone. You shall step on an asp and cobra. You shall tread safely on snake and serpent. No mention of dragons. Because his love is set on me, I will deliver him. Keep in mind, this is the last stanza, so we have changed. The speaker has changed. Because his love is set on me, I will deliver him. I will lift him beyond danger, for he knows me by name. When he calls upon me, I will answer. I will be with him in time of trouble. I will rescue him and bring him to honor. I will satisfy him with long life to enjoy the fullness of my salvation. So a few changes there. Right? Like, for instance, even in terms of little terminology, his truth will be your shield and your rampart, as opposed to the antiquated terminology of a buckler is missing. So that's the New English version. And now we'll move on to the New Jerusalem Bible. Love this version. That cover painting is actually a portrait of my arrival on BookTube. True story. So anyway, let's go and see what the New Jerusalem Bible does for Psalm 91. I think you're going to notice right away, the New Jerusalem Bible is an extremely conscientious work. As you can tell from this kind of indicia on the side, that looks very recondite. And leaving aside the notes here, These things mean that someone is paying really close attention to the text and is rewarding biblical students. Now, you can read it without that. You can just ignore that stuff. But that's all there, and it's all there for a reason. Every little tiny jot and tittle of that is there for a reason. And it can be a good shorthand indication that you are dealing with a scholarly Bible, which can sometimes be really useful and often very interesting. So now here is Psalm 91 in the New Jerusalem Bible. You who live in the secret place of Elion, spend your nights in the shelter of Shaddai, saying to Yahweh, my refuge, my fortress, my God in whom I trust. A radical difference right away. Names introduced. Names that if you were paying attention to the first two versions that we have there, you notice that in those versions, here, let's get them. Let's get them since we're only going to do this the one time. Let's go back to the New English Bible. When this thing starts, and the King James was the same way, you that live in the shelter of the Most High and lodge under the shadow of the Almighty, who say, the Lord is my safe retreat, my God, the fastness in which I trust. Notice, whether you notice or not, notice that there are 4 references being made there to God, and they're not the same. They're not repeated. It's Most High, Almighty, the Lord, and my God. It will seem to you, if you're just reading this cold, it will seem innocuous, because those are all, we view them as synonyms. We interchange them all the time. Christians interchange them all the time. But the King James and the New King James, they go out of their way to preserve the fact that 4 different names are used. But in the New Jerusalem Bible, the actual names are used. There are no synonyms used. Instead, the stuff that's in the oldest extant manuscripts is used instead, and they are actually different names. You who live in the secret place of Elion, spend your nights in the shelter of Shaddai, saying to Yahweh, my refuge, my fortress, my God in whom I trust. He rescues you from the snare of the fowler set on destruction. He covers you with his pinions. You find shelter under his wings. His constancy is shield and protection. You need not fear the terrors of the night, the arrow that flies in the daytime, the plague that strikes in the darkness, the scourge that wreaks havoc at high noon. Very good diction here. Better than the other two. This is someone who wanted this to be a poem in English. Though 1,000 fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, you yourself will remain unscathed. You have only to keep your eyes open to see how the wicked are repaid. Notice the difference there? In the first two, it's a little bit awkward. It's you will only see with your eyes how the wicked are repaid. Here, we're not sure, we're not scholars, so we don't know if the writer added something. But here, it is given a much more manifest meaning. That how does it go here? You have only to keep your eyes open to see how the wicked are repaid. That's a if-then progression. If you keep your eyes open, you will see how the wicked are repaid. That was not really present in the first two. It works better, very much so. It works better, and there's no fault in you acknowledging that and saying, oh, okay, there, I get it. Now I understand what the reference is to looking with my own eyes at how the wicked are repaid. The only question you will have once something works well with you is, how accurate is it? And you're going to need to do footwork to find that out. It's still not going to change the fact that it works well for you, but you're going to need to know whether or not what works well for you is the invention of the original writer of this psalm, King David, on an odd moment, or the writer of this English version. You have to keep that in mind. Otherwise, you're a child being led around by the nose. You don't want to be that. That's why you have so many Bibles in your bookstore's Bible section, because you can dig into them. What better way for a rainy Sunday? What better thing to do? Just make sure if you do that, 2 things. One, if you're going to do a huge, intertextual Bible study of all the Bibles that are at your bookstore's Bible section, one, don't clog up the section. Don't clear off a shelf so you can do it at a table over coffee. Don't fill them on the floor. Be courteous to the other people who are shopping. And 2, if you're going to use the section like that, especially over an hour, you probably ought to buy a Bible. But anyway, let's move on here. Or actually, let's repeat that, because that was really good. You need not fear the terrors of night, the arrow that flies in the daytime, the plague that stalks in the darkness, the scourge that wreaks havoc at high noon. Though 1,000 fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, you yourself will remain unscathed. You have only to keep your eyes open to see how the wicked are repaid. You who say, Yahweh, my refuge, and make Elion your fortress, no disaster can overtake you, no plague come near your tent. He has given his angels orders about you to guard you wherever you go. They will carry you in their arms in case you trip over a stone. You will walk upon wild beast and adder. You will trample young lions and snakes. So we can see now from the preponderance what we knew already, which is the dragon in the original King James was a flight. It was figurative. Other translators are not using that word. They are using snakes, adders, wild beasts. And then again, we have the final stanza here, which is where the speaker changes. The speaker changes to God, who is hearing all of this and saying, "You're not wrong. I will, if you put your faith in me, I will protect you. Since he clings to me, I rescue him. I raise him high since he acknowledges my name. He calls to me and I answer him. In distress I am at his side. I rescue him and bring him honor. I shall satisfy him with long life and grant him to see my salvation." Okay, so that's 91 in the New Jerusalem Bible. And then as we fall into a little habit here. I kind of like traditions on these kinds of things. We are going to go to Bible Gateway, which is an internet gateway. It's the NIV, it's the New International Version, but it's often finessed a bit. It's the NIV, but not quite as usually as it appears. Little places here and there in, like, for instance, a printed NIV that you might have on the shelf at home. I think because the NIV, as it is tailored for Bible Gateway, is meant to echo modern American fundamentalist Christian terminology in ways that sometimes Psalms or other parts of the Old Testament are reluctant to do because they weren't Christian writings. So let's do Psalm 91 from Bible Gateway, which is the NIV. Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say to the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in whom I trust. Okay, notice we've gone back. The New Jerusalem Bible gave it to us straight. The actual names for the 4 different references in the first stanza. Not one of which echoes the others. Here we've gone back to these sort of blander, more general terms that Christians use interchangeably for God. Most High, Almighty, Lord, and God. Surely he will save you from the fowler's snare and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart. You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. You will only observe with your eyes and see the punishment of the wicked. See? A subtle but very, very substantial English language difference was present in the New Jerusalem, and it's not present here. It's gone back to being gone. That line is, you will only observe with your eyes and see the punishment of the wicked. Which, in context of 1,000 will fall at your hand, 10,000 at your right side, in context of that, this version seems to be saying, those people are going to fall all around you, but you're not going to fall. All you're going to do is look and see with your eyes how the wicked are repaid. Whereas in the New Jerusalem Bible, it's not quite that. There's a subtle little difference. It's not you won't have anything to do but stand around and watch how the wicked are repaid. Instead, it's you only have to look with your eyes to see how the wicked are repaid, with the silent implication being that if you don't look, you won't see it. It's an if-then construction. It's not present in the King James, it's not present in the New King James, and it's not present in the NIV. So, although it works really well, you have to ask yourself, is it true? Is it accurate? Considering what a scholarly version of the New Jerusalem Bible is, you can probably think that it is, in which case, this is the fun of translation. If you come to the conclusion that the if-then construction of the New Jerusalem is correct, then you immediately have to ask why these other versions aren't using it. Is it because they're all copying the King James, which didn't do it? And if that's true, okay, well then that rules out the others, and then you have to ask, why did the King James do it? Pretty smart scholars who did the King James Bible, why did they do it that way, if that's not how it originally reads? Utterly fascinating, just utterly fascinating. But anyway, if you say, the Lord is my refuge, and you make the Most High your dwelling, no harm will overtake you, no disaster will come near your tent, for he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. They will lift you up in their hands so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. You will tread on the lion and the cobra. It's not an asp or a dragon, it's a cobra. You will trample the great lion and the serpent. And then again, for the final stanza, we shift to God speaking. Because he loves me, says the Lord, I will rescue him. I'll protect him, for he acknowledges my name. You will call on me, and he will call on me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life, I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. So that is the Bible Gateway version, the NIV version. And what can we make? What can we make of this psalm? It's pretty interesting. A whole bunch of things going on here, more than we can do in a Psalm Sunday, obviously, since it's just meant to be a chat between friends, not an actual biblical seminar. But what can we make of this psalm? First of all, as I've mentioned in previous episodes, that is extrapolation on the part of the writer of the psalm. The writer of the psalm, to put it in negative terms, is putting words in God's mouth. The writer of the psalm was not in communication with God. This is a prayer that is kind of cosplaying what God is thinking, rather than a prophet saying, God actually said this to me. It's kind of a small distinction, but you have to sort of keep it in mind, because that is a bit of poetic license of a type that has got thousands of people killed over thousands of years. But still, it's a bit of poetic license. And it's a little odd. It's understandable in the faith covenant circles. It's understandable in the faith covenant circles of ancient Hebrew religion, where this originated. But it's a little odd. We're talking about an immaterial, all-knowing, all-powerful, eternal Lord and Creator of the universe. Why would he care if you sing his praise or are faithful to him? Why would he care about whether or not one desert warlord in one primitive area of one planet circling one star in the entire universe, why would he care? Why would he either give or withhold his salvation, his protection, his pinions? We're not going to go down the route here of speculating that God is not human, that God has wings with feathers on them. I think we can assume right from the beginning, from the King James, from the original, I think we can assume the writer is being figurative. I don't like to do that, because I don't think that Christians should get a certain kind of Christian. You know the kind I mean. I'm sure you've encountered the kind I mean. The Christians who are listening to me now, I'm sure you've rolled your eyes at the kind of Christian I mean, and been a little bit irritated that they are what all Christians are in the mind frame of too many people. But there's a certain kind of Christian, and there aren't a few of them. There are a lot of them. There are millions and millions of them, who rest very heavily on no figurative interpretation. This is all literal. I don't think they should get the benefit of the doubt when the literal interpretation works against them, and the literal interpretation of this psalm is that God is a bird. We won't go down that route. We won't go down that route. Instead, we'll say, why would it be true that you would get that salvation based on whether or not you do the right thing to God himself? Doesn't that make God very much human? You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. That's one element that jumps out. Another element that really jumps out in this psalm, and you don't need to know anything about the history of how this psalm has been used. This psalm has had a long, long history. Most of them have, but this one more than most. You don't have to know anything about that history to know already one other thing we can definitely say about this psalm, which is, it is lying to you. This psalm is making claims that are flatly, factually untrue. And there's no good shunting it right into the metaphorical or the spiritual. There's no good doing that, because the psalm won't let you do that. The psalm is very much talking about the real world, about the material world. And the reason we know that is because this psalm sometimes does talk about the immaterial world. Since it's doing both at the same time, you can't possibly say that when it's talking about the material world, it's not. It knows what it's doing, and it makes a series of promises. We've read them a few times here. In fact, I don't want to read. Let's read the New Jerusalem since it's written so much better. Let's read that. You need not fear the terrors of night, the arrow that flies in the daytime, the plague that stalks in the darkness, the scourge that wreaks havoc at high noon. No disaster can overtake you. No plague come near your tent. He has given his angels orders about you to guard you wherever you go. That's a few references to plague. And we have all lived through a plague. And we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that Christians were not protected. And Jews were not protected, even if we use the original reading of this psalm coming from the Jewish culture. The religious, the devout, were not protected. In fact, they died in greater numbers because they ignored common sense health reservations. They were told to do that by a lot of their pastors. Some of the famous nut jobs of which actually made the nightly news by yelling up at the pulpit, if you're wearing a mask, get out of my congregation, get out, there's the door. Screaming at the top of their lungs, spit coming out, get out. If you're wearing a mask during a time of plague, during a time of an infectious viral disease, if you're wearing a mask, get out. And plenty of churches said that we have the protection of God. We don't need the protection of man. And if you opt for the protection of man, it means your faith is weak. And as a result, many, 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 many Christians died. But even the ones who don't partake of that kind of, revival tent lunacy and did all the right things still died. This psalm promises they will not if they are faithful to God. And that is not true. That is absolutely not true. We have historical records going back 200, more than that years, of revivalist Christians pooling together the money there in Bloomington, Indiana, to go on safari because it seemed like so much fun. Let's see the glories of God's wilderness in their original setting, because most of these groups thought that the Garden of Eden was in Serengeti. And we have many, many accounts of them being bitten by snakes, being attacked by lions. They were not protected. This psalm is making promises about the real world, that the pestilence that stalks in darkness and the plague that destroys at midday will not touch you. And that is not true. Plenty of people have used this psalm to say that it is, and to draw great comfort from it. But nevertheless, and you have to wonder, right, in a historical way, you have to wonder, well, the ancient Hebrews knew that. Obviously, the Bible itself has examples of rulers, priests, righteous men who were struck by disease and killed. Also killed in war. None of this thousands on one side, 10,000s on the other that were killed in war. It's not always the evil or the wicked that die that way. It's often the good. And the ancient Hebrews knew that. So you have to ask yourself, why is that in there? And there is an answer to that. The deeper you go, the better an answer you get. We can't know for sure. But it's likely that when God is talking at the end about him, he's referring to one person. He's referring to the king of the Israelites. It's likely that he's just talking about the king. Because he loves me, says the Lord, I will rescue him. Oh, wait, well, okay, look. Oh, you can't look. We're not actually in the same room together. Sorry, I forget. In Bible Gateway has a footnote at the bottom. They have just two, as opposed to the millions that are in the King James or in the New Jerusalem. They have just two. They mention that they are translating the names. So Shaddai, Elion, that sort of thing. They're translating those names in the first stanza. But for the last stanza, because he loves me, says the Lord, I will rescue him, they say that is probably the king. Okay, so the most reader-accessible translation tells you that right away. Great. Okay, so that's not something that Christians are trying to hide. This psalm can be interpreted in a broader way. Most of them can be. I've known many Christians who took great comfort from this psalm in spiritual terms. But it's a reach. You have to misread the psalm to do that. Not all psalms, but this one you have to misread, because this psalm is specifically talking about the real world. It's saying that if you put your trust in God, if you look to the Most High, if you are protected by His pinions, under the protection of His wings, then diseases won't touch you. Misfortune won't touch you. The wicked won't touch you in their tens of thousands, and you will live a long time. The faithful know that is not true. The faithful have always known that is not true. It's just this weird kind of mental gymnastics they have to do to apply the metaphorical meanings in a psalm that is not offering you many. But it is lovely. It is a lovely kind of refuge psalm where if you do your part, God will come through for you. and you will be able to walk on the heads of serpents. This is unfortunately yet another part. There are 4 or 5 parts in the Bible as a whole that seem to promise to the faithful that they're immune from poisonous serpents, which has led to a whole bunch of little sects of Christianity that like to handle poisonous serpents with the inevitable results. We'll get to those. I'm sure we'll get to those in time. But that's Psalm 91 for today. It's a big, complex mess of a thing that is so much fun to dig into. What are the reasons behind each one of the choices that each one of these translators is making? I swear, it's translation school to go through a row of Bible translations at the same time. The important thing to keep in mind, I think, for Christians, for believing Christians, I'm sure that some believing Christians are watching this. The important thing to keep in mind is that digging into the text is not digging into your faith. This is not threatening your faith at all to do this. If you are a believing Christian, you believe that something very real and life-transforming is speaking directly to your heart through this writing, through it, as a kind of a tunnel or a conduit. Not that the tunnel or the conduit is the thing, right? Any more than the tunnel that you take to Yosemite National Park, that you're going to pitch your tent there in the tunnel. You're not. You very much have to believe that something very real is reaching you through this writing, which you acknowledge as well as I do is written by men, translated by men, edited by men, worked on by men. Men can make mistakes. They can have all sorts of differences of opinion. The thing that will be reaching you, the thing that will be touching your faith, is real anyway. For you believing Christians out there, you know that it's there. You could lose the whole of the Bible. It would still be there. It has reached you through this, but it is real on its own terms for you. So we're free to examine these texts. We're not going to play the dumb games here of, the kind of carping new atheist that says if there's any jot or tittle that's wrong, if there's any contradiction, then look, the whole thing is fake and ha ha ha, and you're a loser. We're not going to do anything like that. Instead, we're going to run these things through the ringer. What is going on in these translations? That is just so much fun to do. That is just so much fun to do, regardless of whether or not you believe. And there's a lot going on in this poem. Why did the original writer of this poem shift the focus at the end? Why? Not many psalms do that. Why does the writer of the psalm take it upon himself to speak for God? When this was originally created, was it chanted in temple? And if it was chanted in temple, did maybe somebody else read that last verse? Did maybe the congregation read that last verse? Or a different person, up on the proscenium, maybe someone in the role of God? It's just fascinating to think of. Just fascinating. You can't help but notice that it's happening on the page, so you have to ask why. And that have to ask why applies right down to single word choices. A buckler, for instance, is not a rampart. A rampart's an architectural feature. A buckler is the thing you wear on your arm. So which is it? And why is it? What are these people thinking? What was their rationale? Just fast. Sorry, I will go on. These Psalm Sundays are not all going to be 30 minutes, I promise. So we will move on next Sunday to something else, and I will be a lot briefer. I will see you then. Thank you, Book 2.